This presentation is about the Reformulation for Health programme and how we support and upskill the food industry to support reformulation of Scottish products. My name is Harriet and I am, as Frances covered, the Reformulation for Health Executive within the Food and Drink Federation Scotland. The Food and Drink Federation Scotland is a membership organisation. We are UK-wide for the food and drink industry across the UK. We help our members to navigate issues ranging from sustainability, packaging, nutrition to international trade. We also represent our members on issues raised by the government that would impact on the food industry. FDF Scotland hosts 3 projects which are funded by the Scottish Government, one focusing on net zero, one promoting the industry as a career destination of choice, and our Reformulation for Health programme. We are here to give free support to Scottish food and drink businesses to make commonly consumed products healthier, therein improving the health of Scotland's people. Now, we're actually very lucky to have this programme in Scotland because there isn't a similar framework in England or anywhere else. We would really like to see this introduced one day, learning from the successes of our own programme. So you might be asking, why is reformulation needed and why is it so important that the food industry plays its part? Rationing ended in 1954. That's the year my mum was born. Within a lifetime, we have gone from war-related food insecurity through industrialisation and times of plenty, and we now sit in quite an odd environment where, unfortunately, some children go undernourished while others are over-consuming and obese. The pendulum has swung from one extreme to another. Now we're working hard to help that pendulum settle in a more comfortable place. This is why it's so important to holistically support the food industry, supporting consumers and develop the future food workforce to understand the importance of health at every stage of product development. And we're so glad to have engagement with yourselves as you are the ones inspiring and shaping the workforce of tomorrow. Throughout the presentation, I've highlighted certain skills pathways where the topic links to a specific job. This will highlight the wealth of career opportunities for skilled STEM professionals within our industry. The Reformulation for Health programme started in 2018 as a result of the Scottish Government strategy called A Healthier Future. This outlines the government's aims and ambitions for diet and healthy weight. Now, looking at the data from when the strategy was developed, you can see that the majority of people in Scotland felt that their health was good, with 71% of adults and 94% of children saying that their health is very good or good. However, this highlights a disconnect between how people feel and the reality of their health. Data from the same year shows that actually 2/3 of adults were overweight or obese, with 28 classed as obese. These levels remain relatively similar today, but remember 71% thought that their health was good. When we look at children, remember 94% thought that they were healthy. When we look at the graph, you can see the percentage of children who are classed as a healthy weight, and it's nowhere near this level. By age 12 to 15, 40% of girls are classed as overweight or obese. This shows how important it is for us to work to improve the dietary health of people in Scotland. Now, although we are known for our deep fried Mars bars up here in Scotland, the issue of obesity isn't exclusive. If we look at data from England, 67% of men and 60% of women are overweight or obese. Children are also affected, with 14% overweight and 26 to 24% of boys and girls respectively living with obesity. Across the water to Northern Ireland, levels of overweight and obesity are similar, with 65% of adults in this category and 25% of children. And finally to Wales, where we have data on childhood obesity rates. This data really illustrates the trend with obesity that is unfortunately linked to poverty and time again prevalent in the most deprived areas. This is one of the reasons that I really believe in reformulation. Yes, educating people how to eat well is so important, but there are many uncontrollable factors if relying on this as your only method of obesity management. The most vulnerable, the children, and those who don't get to choose what food enters the home or have the ability to plan and prepare healthy food, are affected, and they're suffering as a result of poor diets. So when designing how to launch the programme, it was vital to ensure that we fully understood the challenges and opportunities facing the industry and consumers in Scotland. We carried out research, and the similarities in results really helped to identify these key concerns. Both consumers and businesses identified these top 3 challenges on the screen, and this information shapes the way that the support is offered. So one way to reformulate is to reduce portion size. This is often thought of as an easy option, but this feedback shows that there are still challenges and costs around doing so, from packaging and labelling costs, and also, very importantly, consumer backlash over shrinking portion sizes. So what is reformulation? We read so many things in the press about health and food. It can be quite confusing to understand what it means and what we should be doing. So put simply, reformulation is about improving the nutritional profile of a product. Many people think that this is just about removing things like fat, salt, and sugar, but we're also focusing on product enrichment and positive nutrition with increasing fibre, fruits, and vegetables. The 8 principles of reformulation shown on the bottom of the screen there were developed to reflect the Scottish dietary goals. These 8 principles form the backbone of our Reformul8 projects. As the programme is based around the Scottish dietary goals, it doesn't include principles around special diets or dietary trends such as veganism, gluten-free, or added protein. A huge amount of our time and resource is spent identifying innovative ingredients that can be used to replace certain ingredients. It's important that when we approach manufacturers to work with us, we are ready with solutions for them. So if I want to reduce the saturated fat in a cake, a simple sponge cake, let's say, can we just remove the volume of one of the ingredients of the recipe? Well, if we choose to remove 20% of the butter from this recipe, this will not then result in a product that has 20% less fat. The new recipe is missing those grams of butter that have been removed, and therefore the ratios all shift. The final percentage of the other ingredients has actually increased. We need to be aware of the unintended consequences of reformulation by reduction, that other nutrients don't increase, such as the sugar in this recipe. It's also important to be aware of what we swap an ingredient with, remembering the different calorific values of different nutrients and making sure that we're not replacing ingredients with something that has a higher calorific value. We use nutritional software packages to calculate the nutritional values of recipe formulations and identify which ingredients are contributing towards fat, sugar, sodium, and fibre. The Reformulation for Health programme works mainly with small to medium-sized food producers, who are the ones who often lack the in-house technical staff, knowledge, and time to focus on reformulation. And that's where our support and guidance comes in. We can advise businesses and their teams on the practical challenges of reducing certain nutrients and solutions to help. We always benchmark a product against the nutritional health targets. So this could be the salt reduction or calorie reduction targets for 2024, or front of pack labelling claims. With every nutrient, there are functional challenges to overcome. For example, if you reduce salt from a product, there might be an impact on preservation and shelf life. We can connect businesses to suppliers who sell reduced sodium salts or salt alternatives such as seaweeds or yeast extracts. They can trial and test a salt replacer, maybe trial different distributions or different crystal size of salt in the product, or work with a flavor technologist to develop a solution to replace salt. We've worked with a range of businesses on salt reduction, from the UK's largest macaroni cheese brand, ready meals, sausages, and crisps, each of those projects having their own bespoke solution. One very impactful project was with Bell's Pies, who worked with us to reduce salt from their pie shells. They found that there was actually a minimum amount of salt needed in the pastry to hold its structure. And when the pastry contained too little salt, it didn't survive the factory process and it wouldn't pass through the shell making equipment. They finally found their sweet spot and managed to remove 50% of the salt from all of their pies. Now, they make 20 million pie shells a year. So this 50% reduction equates to 16 tons of salt being removed. That's the same weight as 16 family cars. When it comes to sugar, we have just as many functional roles, from the Maillard reaction to providing structure, controlling available water, and therein the shelf life of the final product. The businesses we work with go through a process of reviewing the benefits and issues with each method of sugar reduction or replacement. Some projects, such as a bakery product, might reduce the quantity of sugar in a specific component of the recipe, maybe a filling or topping, whereas others might choose to replace sugar with an alternative ingredient. This can be a process of trial and error to find the best comparison with taste, appearance, mouthfeel, and functionality. The good news is that many products in certain categories have already been reformulating, paving the way for others to follow. For example, you'll know that the role of sugar in ice cream is so important, impacting on crystal size, melting point, mouthfeel, sweetness. And yet it can still be reformulated by using functional fibers, sweeteners, or different flavor profiles. I'm sure that as I'm describing this process, you can see that reformulation is one big problem-solving exercise using lateral thinking, research, and knowledge of food technology and processing. Excuse me. So fat is always a hot topic. With 9 kilocalories per gram, fat is the most effective nutrient target for calorie reduction, as well as all the additional health implications of saturated fat. In Scotland, we're looking ahead to possible mandatory calorie labelling and legislation restricting promotion of products considered to be high in fat, sugar, or salt, similar to those implemented last year in England. Again, it's not simply a case of reducing by a certain amount. Fat plays many vital roles in food production, and we need to make sure that any alternative still allows for the final product to be received as the same quality by the consumer. We've been working with a Scottish cake fat manufacturer who has developed a reduced fat alternative ingredient. Some of the fat has actually been taken out and replaced with water, making it healthier and more affordable to bakers for cake and pastry products. So for food businesses considering reformulation, there are many drivers that motivate them to change their well-loved recipes. Some manufacturers want to reduce the amount of reds on their front of pack labels. Some may wish to meet the salt reduction targets, which cover a wide range of products from sausages and burgers to breakfast cereals, pizzas, and crisps. While others may want to make a front of pack health claim, such as being lower in fat or higher in fiber. We are already seeing many businesses working towards the nutrient profile model, which is the system that works out if your product is classified as being HFSS, high in fat, sugar, or salt. As I said, this is already an implication in England, and with many brands selling cross-border from Scotland, their product might be implicated in these promotional restrictions. Having given you a brief introduction to the Reformulation for Health programme and a whistle-stop tour of the process of reformulation, now I'd like to introduce our aims to support you in informing your students on reformulation and health. In terms of the future food workforce, we need a wide variety of skills to help reformulating, including those I've already highlighted through the presentation, but there are so many more. From some recent Facebook polls of teachers in Scotland, we can see what areas of support and what type of resources might be of interest. We're developing resources that would encompass the process of reformulation while also highlighting these skill sets involved to show off the career opportunities in the food and drink industry. Please do feel free to write in the comments if you have any other requests or ideas in how we can support your teaching. In addition to the resources, we already have a wide variety of materials available online. If you head to the Reformulation for Health page on the FDF website, you'll be able to find these under our toolkits page. We deliver quarterly campaigns on specific nutrients and sector-specific challenges. You can also sign up to our newsletter on the webpage to receive these. We also, as part of the quarterly campaigns, host webinars with input from academia, industry, and ingredient suppliers. These are very successful as we discuss real-life challenges and solutions which help other people facing the same processes. We cover a wide range of topics from sugar reduction, fibre enrichment, and salt reduction, and these are all free to access on the website. Our podcasts allow us to reach food producers and stakeholders across the country and beyond. We've covered so far additional topics in these from sector-specific issues facing the bakery and butchery industry, as well as how the industry itself can support reformulation. If you search FDF Scotland on any podcast platform, you'll be able to find all of our podcasts and subscribe. I'm also going to introduce to you some of the Reformulate projects and how we actively support healthy reformulation in Scotland to make it happen. We've developed a Reformulate regional programme to support the health of communities across Scotland. Our aim is for at least 20 local food producers in each local authority to engage with the programme. If you think about it, a local producer, a local baker, for example, reformulating their products is so important to the health of their local community. They might also be supplying the local retailers, restaurants and cafes, even schools or hospitals. We also facilitate student placements with a variety of universities, such as Queen Margaret University, Glasgow Caledonian and Abertay. The placements allow students to support businesses with their reformulation projects and help to develop the future workforce with food technologists who have experience of reformulation. These are always popular with manufacturers as well, who are under pressure from so many different angles. So having a student who can take some of the workload from them is so valuable. Now, unfortunately, reformulation doesn't come cheap. Bell's Pies might be saving money by purchasing only half the amount of salt, but they had to pay for the associated costs of trial runs, laboratory testing for shelf life and nutritional analysis. They had to redo their labelling with the new information. To help with this, we have our Reformulate Challenge Fund, which allows manufacturers to access funding to help with these associated costs. So far, we've delivered 3 rounds of the fund, supporting 46 Scottish food producers. Each project is assessed on its impact on dietary health and the nutritional profile changes of the product. We ensure that all baseline data is collected to allow us to measure the impact of the project. Some of the businesses that we've worked with so far are shown up on the screen here, with a wide variety of Scotland's best loved brands, including Bell's, McSween Haggis, Malcolm Allen, Borders, Deans and Arran Dairies. Each project is unique depending on the products to be improved, from haggis, pies, sausages, smoked fish, chocolate, crisps and ice cream, covering each of the principles of reformulation. This has also allowed us to work with ingredient suppliers. So for example, Peacock Salt, we helped them to develop a low sodium salt option for them to sell into the food industry. To help this, excuse me, we have developed our Reformul8 Partnership. This is a network of businesses and stakeholders from across the whole food system in Scotland, working together to support successful reformulation. We have partners from academia, ingredient suppliers, innovation specialists, and of course, the food producers. We use our network of partners in the podcasts, webinars, and events. We're also able to highlight our healthier ingredient partners to businesses, as many of them are committed to helping with the practical product development process, as well as supplying trial samples. To date, we have almost 50 partners supporting healthy reformulation in Scotland, some of which are shown up on the screen here, including Consensus Action on Salt and Sugar, Glasgow Caledonian University, Scotland Food and Drink, and also trade associations like the Scottish Grocers Federation and Scottish Craft Butchers. So, where are we now and what's our focus for the future? When we look at the most recent health survey results, we can see that the level of obese people is still the same at 28%. Given the challenges and changes in habits during COVID, this is understandable. We have seen a slight improvement from 65% overweight and obese to 63%. We can also see the average consumption of foods that are higher in fat, salt and sugar. These patterns, though, will help us to identify what sectors the programme should focus on next. We're also undertaking some research looking at the nutritional quality of Scottish shopping baskets over the past 5 years, pre, during and post-COVID, and to note any nutritional changes. I trust this presentation has shown the importance of us all working together to support reformulation across Scotland's food system, to improve the health of the businesses, its products and our communities. For similar work to be replicated across other areas of the UK and England would remove millions of calories, tons of saturated fat, tons of salt and sugar, and it would make it easier for the general public to live healthier lives. And with that, I'll say thank you again for joining and open up the floor for any questions.
Thanks, Harriet. That was absolutely fantastic. What we're going to do is we're just going to go through some of the resources that we've got available on the website, and then we'll just have a look through the chat to see if there are any questions for you to be asked. So we'll come back to you at the end if that's all right.
Perfect.
Great, thank you. Right, okay, everybody. So what I'm going to do is just have a think about how you can put into practice what Harriet has said during her presentation. And I think that just listening to what Harriet was saying, there are so many ways that you can use the information that she's provided in your teaching in school, and thinking about how you can go about modifying recipes with your pupils. And it will be something that you'll be doing with your pupils aged 11 to 14, but particularly if you're doing GCSE level courses and examinations, you're definitely going to be wanting to think about how you can modify recipes for health. So just the thing to keep in mind when always you're doing something like this is about considering the principles of the Eat Well guide and just thinking about the basics of that. So eating lots of fruit and vegetables, cutting down on saturated fat, salt and sugar, eating more fish, including a portion of oily fish per week, basing meals on starchy carbohydrates, choosing lower fat and lower sugar dairy, and then unsaturated oils and spreads. And then just thinking about how you can put that into practice when thinking about working with recipes with pupils. So Harriet gave the fantastic example of Bell's pies and the salt reduction. And then you can think about how you can reduce salt in your recipes by potentially adding other seasonings. That's another way of doing it. So herbs and spices, chili, lemon, something like that. Also looking to increase the proportion of fruit and vegetables, choosing lean meat where possible, choosing fruit canned in juice rather than syrup, use reduced fat varieties of dairy and spreads where possible, thinking about swapping white carbs for whole grain varieties, changing the cooking method as well. So that's actually when you're making the dish and thinking about whether you can actually bake it or grill it or even air fry it rather than actually deep frying it. And then thinking about the portion size, and that is something that Harriet mentioned, and there are challenges around that for manufacturers, but actually for you in school, thinking about the portion sizes of the dishes that you're making. And we've got some portion size guidance on the Explore Food teacher's notes, but also on the nutrition.org.uk website, we've got some fantastic portion size information, which uses hand sizes in order to measure portions, which is quite a useful thing to do. And then just a few resources. We've got lots and lots on the website, as I'm sure you know, but these are just some that link quite nicely into modifying recipes. So we've got a presentation about the process of modifying recipes and why we need to do it. And then we've got some worksheets and activities for the pupils to do. So they can actually have a think about a recipe and actually identify how they would modify the ingredients and what the impact that would be on the final dish. Couple more. There's a nice PowerPoint presentation which is called Twist the Dish, and within that there's an activity where the pupils get given some cards which have got some meals on them, and they then have to think about how they can adapt and modify that meal to make it healthier based on the Eat Well guide and the 8 tips for healthy eating, and then they can discuss this with the rest of the class. And we've got another activity which is looking at a recipe particularly for lasagna, and actually looking through the recipe, looking through the ingredients and also the method, and thinking about what you could do to change those ingredients to make it a healthier product. And then an extension task would be to use a nutritional analysis program like our Explore Food nutritional analysis program to calculate what the nutrients are in the original recipe and the modified one, and then explain about what they'd found out. So really using their knowledge in a meaningful way, and actually really being able to show that they do understand what they've done and why. Okay, so that's just a quick run through of some of the resources we've got. As I said, we've got lots on the website. Harriet talked about health claims. We've got resources around health claims as well that you might find useful to have a look at, and a knowledge organizer which covers labelling and health claims and other things. Before we move on to questions, just to mention about keeping up to date with our resources and our training. So we've got our education news newsletter, our training newsletter. Follow us on Twitter if you can. And then also keep in touch through our education@nutrition.org.uk email address. We've also got some more training. So we've got some regional conferences. I mentioned our Scottish conference we had a couple of weeks ago. We also had a conference in London last weekend. We're going to Northern Ireland in a couple of weeks' time. Unfortunately, that's virtually, but we'll be speaking to lots of teachers then. And then we're going to Wales in March. And we've got another webinar coming up at the end of March, which is about nutrition and gut health, which I think will be really interesting. And we have got a virtual practical workshop coming up this weekend, which is about food science and practical food skills. And we've got a limited number of places left for that. So if you are interested, you can book on the website and we'd love to see you there. Okay, so let's see whether we've got any questions. Ewan was keeping an eye on the chat box. Is there anything in the chat box, Ewan?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions in the chat. Thanks for sending your questions inequality. So the first question is, are you working with schools or with BNF to provide school-friendly recipes that have been reformulated without losing their appeal to young people? And maybe we could also extend that to school caterers. I don't know if you have any work with them as well.
So we have worked with one manufacturer in the east coast of Scotland who was working on a reformulation project to change a white roll. They needed to increase the fibre content of this to meet the new schools regs in Scotland to allow them to supply into that chain. That white roll was really, really nice, and it needed to be white in order to be appealing to school children. They had found that the school children just weren't picking up the wholemeal brown rolls, so they needed to be filling that requirement and be making a healthier white roll, and they achieved it, and it was really nice. There are many products that can be reformulated and still remain appetizing and really tasty. The ice cream project that we've worked with Arran Dairies, I tasted the reformulated and the original recipes, and the two were indistinguishable. The reformulated product used fibres and inulin and rice starch to replicate the creaminess in the mouthfeel, and it was just as luxurious as the original recipe.
Great, thank you very much. We have another question from Daphne, and I'm going to apologise to Daphne if I misunderstand this question. I'm going to try and paraphrase it. So, what is the percentage of chemical reduction after the process of fermentation compared to the amount pre-fermentation?
So we've not worked on any fermented products. I'm racking my brain. I'm not aware of any fermentation processes that would impact on the salt content. There are products.
Sorry, I'm wondering whether maybe it's referring to sugar. I don't know whether that's the confusion. I'm not sure. Sorry, Daphne, if you'd like to leave a clarifying comment. Great.
Sorry, I missed that. I'm getting a lot of feedback. I can't hear.
Oh, don't worry. Sorry, I'm wondering whether it might be possibly referring to sugar for fermentation rather than salt.
Yeah, absolutely. So the end product after fermentation will be lower in sugar. There is always the caveat that some products will inherently be rich in certain nutrients. So there will be some products that need a certain nutrient or an ingredient to be that product. So we can't do everything for every product, but there is lots that we can do with many.
Great, thank you. We have another one from Joanne, which she asks, she says, thank you for the great presentation, and asks, what nutritional software do you use?
We use NutriCalc. It's really, really responsive. It's really useful. So this is the one that we also train up our university placement students to use. One of the great things about having this nutritional software, and there are many others on the market, is that when you input a recipe, you can either input the pre-made ingredients such as maybe a gravy mix. They have many kind of preloaded on the system, and then when it generates the nutritional analysis, you can actually identify, for example, all of the ingredients where that salt is coming from. And that's really useful because that helps you to identify, actually, maybe there's just one pre-made ingredient that you just need to look for a reduced salt or a low salt option of that. And that can help to make a really easy reformulation.
Great, thanks. And then, very kind comment from Margaret saying it followed on from the nutritional analysis I presented. Thank you for that. And then Amy asks, have you got any new exciting and upcoming projects?
We do. We have just recently started the third round of the Reformul8 Challenge Fund. The Reformul8 Challenge Fund is always the biggest input of manufacturers coming in to start work with us. Unfortunately, manufacturers are under so many pressures at the moment, and with energy costs rising as well, money is really the best way that we can help. So being able to help with the fund always means that we can start kind of new waves of projects. So with our next round of funding, we have a number of butchery products, ready meals, and also bakery, which is a really exciting category for us to be working with. So we have some really exciting projects coming up, and they'll be kind of closing over the next 12 months, those projects.
Great, thanks so much. And I have a question, Francis, if there's any time.
Yes, absolutely.
It's about thinking about sugar reformulation. So there's been a lot of talk about sweeteners again lately, and whether how acceptable they are to consumers, and you know, questions around whether they're healthy, unhealthy. And I was just wondering if you'd seen kind of more challenges with sugar reduction in relation to those sweeteners, and kind of how you've been trying to deal with those.
Yeah, absolutely. And a brand will know what's important to them. So there will be brands who want to be clean label, and they will know that they want their customers, they will know that their customers do not want certain ingredients. So they would not even consider a non-nutritive sweetener, for example. There are other products, for example, where that's less of a priority for their consumers. I always use the example of a blue ice cream. My daughter ate a blue ice cream this week, and it really upset me. But if you think about it, if you are willing to eat a bright blue bubblegum ice cream, flavor ice cream, then the issue of sweeteners might not be so important to you. And that's fine, as long as we are eating a varied diet, then every type of food can be in that diet. So yes, it is a definite no for some, but they do have a role in many other applications.